Story 1, The Mirror Convoy. The 18-wheeler behind me had been following my exact movements for 43 miles, and when I tapped my brakes to test it, the truck behind me hit its brakes before my tail lights even flickered on. I watched in my driver's side mirror as the Phantom rig matched my deceleration perfectly, impossibly, like it was reading my thoughts instead of reacting to my actions. That's when I noticed the driver looked exactly like me. My name is Robert Hayes, and I've been hauling refrigerated goods across the northern routes for 16 years. I know every truck stop between Fargo and Spokane, every way station, every speed trap. I know the difference between a tail wind and someone drafting too close. What I saw in my mirror that night on Montana State Highway 200 wasn't drafting. It was something wearing my face, driving my exact model Peterbilt, hauling what looked like my exact trailer, staying precisely 400 feet behind me in the empty darkness. I'd left Great Falls at 11 p.m. with a load of frozen beef heading to Missoula. The highway was mine alone, no other traffic, just endless black prairie and the tunnel of my headlights cutting through October cold. The other truck appeared around midnight, headlights emerging from nothing at mile marker 147. At first, I thought it was just another driver on the same route, but it never got closer, never fell back, maintained that exact distance. I accelerated to 70. The truck behind me accelerated to 70. I dropped to 55. It dropped to 55 simultaneously, not after seeing my brake lights, but at the exact same instant. I changed lanes on an empty highway just to see. The truck behind me changed lanes in perfect synchronization, like we were connected by an invisible rod. That's when I grabbed my binoculars and looked. The driver had my face, my exact face, same Carhartt jacket, same red beard, same scar over the left eyebrow from a bar fight in Bismarck 8 years ago. He was moving his hands on the steering wheel in the same patterns I was using. When I lifted my coffee cup, he lifted his coffee cup. When I wiped my forehead, he wiped his forehead. Perfect synchronization. But his eyes were looking straight at me in the mirror, and they were completely black, no whites at all, just darkness reflecting my headlights back at me. I grabbed my CB radio. "Breaker, breaker, this is Frost Giant, anyone got ears on?" Static, then my own voice came back through the speaker. "Breaker, breaker, this is Frost Giant, anyone got ears on?" Not an echo. My exact voice with the same inflection, the same breath sounds, but coming back through the radio immediately, impossibly. "Who the fuck is this?" I shouted. "Who the fuck is this?" My voice shouted back, perfectly timed, perfectly matched. I dropped the CB handset like it was burning. The truck behind me but somehow also with me, maintained its position. 400 feet, exact speed, exact trajectory. I watched in mounting horror as the driver who was me smiled in the mirror, and I felt my own face making the same smile against my will. My muscles pulled upward at the corners of my mouth even as my mind screamed in terror. The highway stretched ahead, empty and dark. No exits for 30 miles, no other vehicles, just me and the thing that was becoming me or the thing I was becoming. I couldn't tell any more which was the original. When I looked down at my hands on the steering wheel, they looked strange, unfamiliar, like they belonged to someone else. My own face in the rearview mirror seemed foreign. Was I Robert Hayes? Had I always been Robert Hayes? The memories were there. Childhood in Billings, first truck at 22, divorce at 31. But they felt thin, like a story someone had told me instead of something I'd lived. I tried closing my eyes, but they wouldn't close. My body was no longer taking commands from my brain. I was a passenger in myself. My foot on the accelerator wasn't pushing down because I wanted it to. It was pushing down because the truck behind me was pushing down, and I was simply mimicking it. No, That wasn't right. We were both being controlled by something else. Something that needed two trucks, two drivers, two identical movements for some purpose I couldn't comprehend. Mile marker 178. The gas gauge showed 3/4 full. I'd topped off in Great Falls, which meant I could run for maybe 400 more miles. What happened when I needed to stop for fuel? Would the truck behind me stop at the exact same moment? Would we both pull into the same pump, occupy the same space, merge into one? The thought made my stomach convulse. I tasted bile and copper. At mile marker 192, I saw a third truck appear in my passenger side mirror, matching my speed, maintaining perfect parallel position. The driver was also me. Same jacket, same face, same black eyes. All three of us were smiling now, and I couldn't stop smiling. My face aching from the sustained grin, my eyes watering but unable to blink. Then a fourth truck appeared ahead of me, driving backward down the highway at 70 miles per hour, facing me, the driver's face illuminated in my headlights. My face. Driving in reverse at highway speed, perfectly straight, never wavering. We were boxing me in. 4 trucks, 4 versions of me creating a formation. And in that moment I understood I wasn't the original. I was one of the copies. Or maybe I was the original and I'd been copying without knowing it, creating echoes of myself across this highway for years, and only now was I becoming aware of what I really was. A repeating pattern. A loop. A ghost truck running the same route forever, spawning duplicates that spawned duplicates, filling the highway with infinite versions of the same moment, the same driver, the same load of frozen beef that had been frozen so long the ice was older than mountains. My CB crackled, all 4 of my voices speaking in unison. "We've been here before, Robert. We've been here always. You remember now, don't you? The accident at mile marker 147, the jackknife, the tanker truck, the fire that burned so hot it turned the asphalt to glass." I didn't remember, but my hands remembered turning the wheel to avoid something that wasn't there. My foot remembered slamming the brakes for an impact that happened years ago, decades ago, centuries ago. The frozen beef in my trailer had been frozen since the Pleistocene. The highway was older than the land it crossed. I'd been driving this route since before trucks existed, since before roads existed, following some ancient path that had always been here, always would be here. The 4 trucks began to converge, slowly, maintaining perfect formation but gradually closing the distance. 400 feet became 300 became 200. I could see every detail of my other faces now. The way the left eye twitched slightly when stressed, the small mole on the right cheek, the chipped front tooth from a childhood bike accident. All of me, all closing in. At 100 feet, I heard the engine sounds synchronizing, the 4 engines creating a harmonic resonance that made the air inside my cab vibrate. My teeth chattered. My vision doubled, tripled, quadrupled. I was seeing from all 4 trucks simultaneously now, looking at myself from 4 angles, the one behind, the one beside, the one ahead driving backward, the one in the center. Was that me? Which perspective was mine? 50 feet. The trucks were close enough now that I could reach out and touch the mirror of the truck beside me. I saw my hand reaching. I felt my hand being reached for. Glass touched glass. Mirror touched mirror. And the reflection doubled back on itself, infinite Roberts in infinite mirrors, each one believing he was the real one, each one wrong. At 20 feet, the trucks began to merge. Metal passed through metal like smoke. The truck behind me pushed into my trailer, the reefer unit phasing through solid matter, and I felt it pushing into my spine, cold mechanical invasion. The truck beside me slipped sideways into my cab, and I felt myself expanding, becoming wider, occupying 2 spaces. The truck ahead collided with my front bumper, and I felt my consciousness stretching forward and backward simultaneously, existing in multiple points along the highway. We became one truck, one driver, but I was simultaneously all four perspectives, all four moments, all four positions. I was behind myself, beside myself, ahead of myself, and inside myself all at once. The sensation was agony. My mind wasn't built for this. Human consciousness isn't meant to exist in parallel. I was pulling apart and crushing together at the same time. The speedometer read 70. The mile marker read 147. The road stretched endlessly in all directions, and I realized with creeping horror that I was no longer moving. The highway was moving beneath me, a treadmill of asphalt, the mile markers repeating in sequence. 147, 148, 149, 150, and back to 147. An infinite loop. The accident that killed Robert Hayes had created a ghost that didn't know it was dead. And that ghost had been driving this same stretch forever, occasionally becoming aware of its own repetition, splitting into multiple instances of dawning horror before collapsing back into unconscious routine. The CB radio spoke in my voice in four-part harmony. Next time you won't notice. Next time you'll just drive. It's easier that way. The loop is comfort. The loop is home. Don't fight the loop, Robert. You are the loop. The four trucks began to separate again, pulling apart like cells dividing. The one behind me drifted back to 400 feet. The one beside me slipped to the parallel lane. The one ahead turned forward and accelerated into the distance. And I was alone again, just one truck, one driver, one load of frozen beef heading to Missoula on Montana State Highway 200. Except I remembered being 4. I remembered the merging, and I knew it would happen again. At mile marker 147, it always happens again. The loop protects itself by making you forget, but something had gone wrong this time. I'd retained the memory. I was aware. I looked in my driver's side mirror and saw the truck 400 feet behind me. The driver looked like Robert Hayes, exactly like him. He was just starting to notice how perfectly I was matching his movements. I watched his face change from confusion to fear. I watched him grab the binoculars. I watched him see his own face looking back at him from my cab. Was I the one behind or the one ahead? Was I the original or the copy? Did it matter? The highway stretched on forever, and I was driving it forever, and somewhere ahead and behind and beside me, other versions of myself were just beginning to understand what they'd become. The frozen beef would never thaw. The highway would never end. Robert Hayes had been dead since the accident, but his ghost didn't know how to stop driving, so it just kept going, splitting and merging and splitting again. An infinite convoy of the same moment, the same realization, the same horror. The CB crackled. My voice. Breaker, breaker, this is Frost Giant, anyone got ears on? I didn't answer. I knew what came next. I'd been here before. I'm here always. Mile marker 147 appeared in my headlights. Behind me, a truck appeared, matching my speed. The loop began again. The loop never ends. The loop is all there is. And somewhere ahead, another Robert Hayes was just starting to notice that the truck in front of him was moving wrong, responding wrong, being wrong. We're all driving the same road. We're all Robert Hayes. We're all dead. We just haven't accepted it yet. But we will. At mile marker 147, we always do. Story 2, The Breathing Cargo. The load I picked up in Bakersfield smelled wrong from the moment they sealed the trailer, and by the time I hit the grapevine, the smell had developed a rhythm, in and out, like something massive was breathing behind the locked doors of my 53-foot reefer. I'd pulled over twice to check the manifest. Agricultural equipment, non-perishable ambient temperature. But agricultural equipment doesn't exhale humid air that fogs your mirrors, and it sure as hell doesn't make the whole trailer expand and contract like a lung. Patricia Sullivan, 38 years old, independent contractor, primarily California roots, occasionally long haul to Arizona or Nevada. 15 years clean driving record. No accidents, no violations. I hauled everything from tomatoes to computer servers, and I'd never rejected a load. Until this one. I should have rejected this one. The shipping facility was wrong from the start. Not the usual distribution warehouse off Highway 99. This was a private facility 40 miles into empty farmland, surrounded by dead orchards. The trees looked burned, though there was no fire damage, just gray skeletal branches reaching up like hands frozen mid-grab. The building itself was unmarked concrete. No company name, no signage, just a loading dock and a single door with a keypad entry. The man who met me didn't give his name. Pale, thin, wearing a suit in 90-degree heat without sweating. He handed me the paperwork, and I noticed his fingernails were too long, yellowed, curved like claws. Time-sensitive delivery, he said. His voice sounded like it was coming from a different room. No stops, no inspections, no opening the trailer under any circumstances. I need to verify the load, I said. Already sealed, DOT compliant, see the manifest. He pointed at the paperwork with a finger that had one too many knuckles. The manifest listed the destination as a facility in Primm, Nevada, just over the California border. 6-hour drive, straight shot on I-15. Easy money, $3,000 for a single load, cash on delivery. That should have been my second warning. Nobody pays $3,000 cash for agricultural equipment. But I'd had a slow month, and $3,000 would cover rent and then some. They loaded the trailer while I waited in the cab. I heard sounds, not machinery sounds, but wet sounds, sliding sounds, and once something that might have been a whimper. I told myself it was hydraulics, equipment shifting, seals adjusting to pressure. The things you tell yourself so you can keep moving, keep earning, keep surviving. When they finished, the thin man knocked on my door. Reefer stays at 68 degrees, not colder, not warmer, exactly 68. Very important. It's not a reefer load according to 68 degrees, Miss Sullivan. Deviation will cause deterioration. The way he said deterioration made my skin crawl, like he was talking about something alive. I should have walked away. I should have left that trailer in that dead orchard and reported the whole thing to the authorities. But I was behind on payments, and $3,000. Doesn't appear often in independent contracting. So I hooked up the trailer, set the reefer to 68, and pulled onto Highway 99 heading south. The smell started 20 miles in. Organic, wet, not exactly rot, but something pre-rot, something in the process of becoming decay. I cranked up the cab air, but it seeped through anyway, thick and warm despite the AC blasting. By the time I merged onto I-5 toward the Grapevine, the smell had texture, coating my throat like oil. That's when I first noticed the breathing. The trailer expanded. I watched it in my side mirror, the metal walls bulging outward maybe an inch, maybe two, a slow inflation. Then it contracted, deflating back to normal. 5 seconds of expansion. 5 seconds of contraction. Perfect rhythm, in, out, in, out. I told myself it was air pressure. Temperature differentials. Normal reefer behavior. But reefer units maintain pressure. They don't create rhythmic pulsing. And normal cargo doesn't generate humidity that fogs every mirror and window, making it look like I was hauling a sauna. At the base of the Grapevine, I pulled over at a truck stop. The breathing had gotten faster, 4 seconds in, 4 seconds out, and the trailer was rocking slightly on its suspension, shifting weight from side to side. I walked back to check the doors. They were sealed with industrial locks, plus 3 additional padlocks I hadn't seen them install. 7 locks total, like they were keeping something in, not keeping thieves out. I put my hand on the trailer door. It was warm, body temperature warm. And I swear to God, I felt it move under my palm, a twitch like muscle spasm, like I'd touched skin instead of steel. The dot number on the trailer was wrong. The registration didn't match the company name. The plates were current but registered to a trucking company that, when I searched on my phone, had been defunct for 11 years. Everything was wrong, and I was standing in a truck stop parking lot with cargo that was breathing faster now, 3 seconds in and out, the rhythm speeding up like a heartbeat during exercise. I called the number on the manifest. It rang once and went to a voicemail in a language I didn't recognize, clicking sounds, wet sounds, something that might have been words if human mouths could make those shapes. I hung up, and immediately my phone rang back from the same number. I answered, "Hello." Breathing the same rhythm as the trailer, 3 seconds in, 3 seconds out. Then a voice layered, multiple voices speaking in unison. "Drive, Patricia, deliver the cargo, do not open the doors must stay closed." What am I hauling? Transition, metamorphosis, becoming. The cargo is changing and it must reach its destination before the change completes. Drive now, drive fast, 68 degrees. If it gets warmer, the change accelerates. If it gets colder, it suffers. We don't want it to suffer, we need it intact. Need what intact? The voices laughed, and it sounded like wind through a slaughterhouse. You'll see. If you open the doors, you'll see. But we recommend not opening the doors. What emerges may not be ready, may not be stable, may be hungry. The call ended. My phone's screen cracked down the middle, spiderwebbing from top to bottom, though I hadn't dropped it. The glass was warm to touch. I stood there for probably 5 minutes, frozen between walking away and getting back in the cab. $3,000. That was the leash. That was the chain. I needed that money. And some part of me, some awful curious part, wanted to know what was in the trailer. What breathes like that? What needs exactly 68 degrees to metamorphose properly? What could possibly be hungry? I climbed back in the cab and pulled onto I-5. The grapevine loomed ahead, a steep climb through mountains that separate the Central Valley from Los Angeles. 4,000 feet of elevation gain. My rig could handle it, but the engine would strain, and the reefer unit would have to work harder to maintain temperature while the whole system was under load. Halfway up the grade, the temperature alarm went off. The reefer was struggling, temperature climbing to 70 degrees. Inside the trailer, the breathing became rapid, excited, 2 seconds in, 2 seconds out, like panting. The whole rig shuddered with each breath. I could feel it through the frame, transmitted up through my seat, vibrating my bones. I pushed harder, trying to crest the summit faster, to get to the downhill where the reefer could catch up. 72 degrees. The trailer was shaking violently now, rocking side to side hard enough that I was drifting between lanes. Other drivers were honking, giving me space, probably thinking I had an unsecured load shifting around. They had no idea how right they were. At 75 degrees, something inside the trailer screamed. Not a mechanical sound, not an animal sound. Something between the two, a shriek that had syllables almost like W. Ords but twisted wrong, vocal cords trying to make human speech and failing. The sound punched through the metal walls, through my cab, directly into my chest cavity. I felt it in my ribs, in my jaw, in my sinuses. I crested the summit at 77 degrees, and the reefer immediately started working overtime, temperature dropping as I began the descent. 75, 73. The screaming stopped, replaced by a low moaning, mournful and wet. 70 degrees. The breathing slowed back to normal rhythm, 68 degrees. The breathing became peaceful, almost contented, and I swear I heard something like a sigh of relief transmitted through the trailer walls. What the hell was I carrying? I tried to convince myself it was livestock. Some illegal transport of animals, endangered species maybe, something that needed specific climate control. But livestock doesn't breathe in perfect unison. Livestock doesn't make the trailer walls bulge uniformly, all at once, like the entire 53-foot space was a single organism. On the downhill, I made good time. Through Santa Clarita, through the northern LA suburbs, staying on I-5 until it merged with I-15 toward Vegas. The sun was setting, orange light bleeding across the desert, and my mirrors were so fogged with humidity from the trailer that I could barely see behind me. Every few minutes I had to wipe them down, and the moisture was warm, sticky, almost viscous. Near Barstow, the trailer started whispering. Not the cargo, the trailer itself. The metal walls were conducting sound, transmitting voices, dozens of voices, hundreds maybe, all speaking in whispers I couldn't quite make out. I turned off the radio to listen. The whispers formed patterns, rhythms, almost like conversation, but in a language of pure sibilance, S sounds and F sounds and wet clicking sounds. And occasionally, buried in the noise, I'd hear English, single words. Soon. Ready. Hungry. Waiting. Mother. That one stopped me cold. The voice that said mother sounded young, childlike, and it said it with such longing, such desperate need that my eyes watered. What were they doing in that facility? What had they loaded into my trailer? And why did it need 68 degrees exactly? Not for preservation, for incubation, for growth. I was a fucking transport incubator, hauling something through its metamorphosis, keeping it at optimal development temperature while it changed from one form to another. I grabbed the CB radio. Anyone hearing weird sounds from their cargo, anyone hauling biological loads, this is Desert Rose, anyone got ears on. Static, then my own voice came back, distorted. Anyone hearing weird sounds from their cargo? Anyone hauling biological loads? But underneath my voice, I heard the whispers, the same whispers from the trailer, transmitted through the CB somehow. They were in my radio, in my phone, in my mirrors. The cargo was spreading, infecting my equipment, turning my entire rig into an extension of itself. I looked at the fuel gauge. 3/4 full, still enough to reach Prim. Still enough to complete the delivery and collect my $3,000 and never think about this again. That's what I told myself, that I could forget, that I could move on, that I wouldn't wake up every night for the rest of my life hearing those whispers, that breathing, that childlike voice saying mother with such terrible need. At mile marker 237 on I-15, the reefer unit failed. Temperature started climbing immediately, 69, 70, 72. The breathing accelerated again, faster than before, harder than before. The trailer wasn't just rocking anymore, it was bucking, slamming against the fifth wheel, threatening to jackknife. I fought the wheel, trying to keep straight, and in my mirror I saw the trailer walls bulging further than before, expanding 3 inches, 4 inches, the metal stretching like skin, like the whole thing would rupture. 75 degrees. The screaming started again, but this time there were words. Hot, hot, hot hurts burns, mother make it stop please, mother please. I'm not your mother, I screamed back. The trailer went silent, completely silent, no breathing, no whispers, just dead air and the highway noise and my own ragged gasping. Then quietly, sadly, yes, you are. You've been carrying us. You've been keeping us warm. You've been feeding us with your fear. You're our mother, Patricia Sullivan. We know your name. We know your smell. We're almost ready to meet you. The temperature hit 80 degrees. The trailer locks started breaking. I heard them snapping, one by one, metal shearing under pressure from inside. 7 locks, and they were all failing. The doors were bulging outward, bowing like something massive was pressing against them. I saw a truck stop ahead, lights in the desert, darkness, salvation. I pulled off the highway doing 70, smoking my brakes, skidding into the parking lot sideways. I jumped out. F the cab and ran, didn't grab my bag, didn't grab my phone, just ran as fast as I could toward the building, toward lights, toward people. Behind me, the trailer doors exploded outward. I didn't look back, didn't want to see. But I heard it emerging, wet sliding sounds, multiple heavy impacts, things flopping onto asphalt, and then movement, fast movement, dozens of something scuttling on too many legs. I heard the whispers becoming speech, human speech, practiced and clear. Mother, mother, wait. Mother, we're ready now. We want to show you. Mother, please. I made it to the truck stop door and slammed it behind me. The clerk behind the counter looked up, bored, and I screamed, "Call 911. Something's loose. Lock the doors." He moved so slowly, like time had turned to syrup. Reached for the phone. Started dialing. And I turned to look through the glass door to see what I'd birthed, what I'd incubated across 400 miles of California highway. The trailer was empty. Just empty space, doors hanging open, cargo area completely vacant. No equipment, no livestock, nothing. The things I'd heard, the things that called me mother, were gone, scattered into the desert, or hiding, waiting. The cops came eventually. Highway patrol. They investigated. Found nothing wrong with the trailer except the broken locks and the blown doors. No evidence of cargo, no residue. The reefer unit was functioning perfectly, temperature reading exactly 68 degrees despite my instruments showing failure. The paperwork was gone from my cab, dissolved into chemical-smelling residue on my passenger seat. The shipping facility outside Bakersfield didn't exist. When they went to check, they found empty farmland. No building, no concrete. No dead orchards, just dirt and scrub grass that locals swore had been there untouched for decades. No company claimed the trailer. No one came for delivery. The $3,000 was never paid. But every night when I try to sleep, I hear the whispers, and I hear them calling me mother. And I know they're out there, growing, spreading, waiting. I gave birth to something on that highway, something that needed exactly 68 degrees and a human host to carry it through its transition. I was the womb. The trailer was the placenta. And what emerged is loose now, calling for me, wanting me to see what it's become. Sometimes, late at night, I get phone calls from numbers that don't exist. I answer and I hear breathing, that same rhythm, in and out. And a voice, clearer each time. Mother, we're doing so well, we're growing, we're learning. Soon we'll come home, soon we'll show you what you made. You'll be so proud, Mother, so very proud. I don't drive anymore, haven't touched a truck in 6 months, but the whispers find me anyway, in the walls, in the pipes, in the electrical hum. They're everywhere now, spreading, metamorphosing, becoming. And I'm still their mother, whether I want to be or not. The cargo is always breathing. Story 3. The station that EATS time. I filled up at the Sycamore Springs truck stop on Route 50 in Nevada at exactly 2:47 a.m. on November 9th, 2023. And when I finished pumping and looked at my watch, it said 4:15 a.m., but the sun was setting instead of rising, and the clerk who took my payment was a different person wearing the same uniform who insisted I'd been there since yesterday afternoon. And did I want to buy lunch even though I'd just eaten dinner 3 hours ago? The calendar behind the counter said November 8th. I'd lost a day, or gained a night, or something had eaten 13 hours and 28 minutes of my life while I stood next to my truck watching numbers climb on a fuel pump. Marcus Chen, 42, specialized in western desert routes, California to Colorado. I'd stopped at Sycamore Springs maybe 200 times over 12 years. Same layout every time, 6 pumps, a convenience store, showers in the back, mechanic shop closed after 10 p.m. I knew this place. It was burned into my mental map. But when I walked into the store at 2:47 a.m. to pay for pump 3, the interior was different, not renovated, not updated, different. The aisles were in wrong positions. The coffee station was where the cold drinks should be. The bathroom doors were on the opposite wall. "Pump 3, I said to the clerk. Young guy, early 20s, name tag said DEREK. He looked at me strangely. "You just paid for pump 3 6 hours ago. You feeling okay, man?" "What are you talking about? I just started pumping." He showed me the register screen. There was my truck's plate number logged at 10:23 a.m. on November 8th. "You came in, paid cash, bought a sandwich, used the bathroom, and said you were heading to Denver. That was you, right? Same truck outside." I looked at the timestamp, November 8th. It was November 9th. I'd started this drive yesterday in Sacramento. I had timestamps, GPS logs, way station receipts proving I'd be on the road all of November 8th, arriving at Sycamore Springs at 2:47 a.m. on the 9th. But this register said I'd been here yesterday morning. "Let me see your calendar," I said. Derek pointed at the wall, November 8th, Thursday. "That's wrong, it's Friday, November 9th. "It's Thursday, man, you okay? You been driving too long, we got a medical." I pulled out my phone. November 9, 2023, 2:51 a.m. 4 minutes had passed since I'd started pumping, except Derek insisted 6 hours had passed. I showed him my phone. He stared at it. "That's your phone's wrong, look." He showed me his phone, November 8, 4:17 p.m. "See, Thursday afternoon, you must have forgot to change time zones or something." But we were in Nevada, same time zone as California. There was no adjustment, and the sun outside the window was wrong, low on the horizon, orange light of either dawn or dusk. I'd arrived in darkness, full night. November 9th at 2:47 a.m. meant hours until sunrise, but through the window I saw sunset, backward sun, time running wrong. "I need to use your bathroom," I said. The bathroom was where it shouldn't be, and when I looked in the mirror, my reflection was older. Not dramatically, but noticeable. Deeper lines around the eyes, grayer at the temples. I'd gained maybe 3 years of aging on my face in the minutes since entering this building. I touched my face, and my reflection touched back with a half-second delay, like there was lag between reality and the mirror. When I came out, a different clerk was at the register. Woman, 50s, name tag said Linda. "Where's Derek?" I asked. "Who's Derek? I'm the only one on shift today." "The guy who was just here. Young guy, Derek." Linda looked at me with concern. "Sir, there's no Derek working here. Never has been. You sure you're okay? You look disoriented. Maybe you should sit down." I looked at the calendar on the wall. November 7th, Wednesday. I was losing days, or the station was. Time wasn't flowing. It was pooling, eddying, moving in wrong directions. I'd entered at 2:47 a.m. on November 9th, and I was sliding backward through the week. Or the station was sliding forward, or we were both drifting through something that wasn't time at all but looked like time from the outside. "I need to leave," I said. "You should rest first. You seem confused. Dangerous to drive confused." She was right that I was confused, but every instinct said staying was wrong. The longer I stayed, the more time would slip. I'd walked in minutes ago, or hours ago, or days ago, and I couldn't trust my memory anymore. Had I been here before? Had I stopped at Sycamore Springs on a previous trip, and this was actually that previous trip, and I was remembering it wrong? Or was this station somehow collecting moments, stacking them, replaying them? I went outside. My truck was parked at pump 3 exactly where I'd left it. Fuel cap still open. Nozzle still in the tank, pump reading $347.83, but the truck looked older. Paint faded. Rust spots on the fender that hadn't been there before. I checked the inspection sticker, expired 4 years ago. Impossible. I just had inspection last month. There were other trucks in the lot. 7 of them parked at odd angles, covered in dust like they'd been sitting for weeks. I walked over to the nearest one. California plates, thin layer of grime. I wiped the windshield and looked inside. The cab was full of cobwebs. Fast food wrappers on the passenger seat had fossilized, paper yellowed, food turned to dust. The driver's log book was open on the dash. Last entry was September 2019, 4 years ago. This driver had stopped here and never left, or had left through time instead of through space, or was still here somewhere in some version of Thursday or Tuesday or next year, pumping gas that never finished, paying a clerk who kept changing, trapped in the loop. I checked the other trucks, all the same, abandoned but not abandoned, waiting, each log book showing different dates stretching back years. The oldest was from 2003. 20 years of trucks, 20 years of drivers, all stopping at Sycamore Springs and never making it back to the highway. I ran back to my truck. The pump was still running, $347.83. The numbers hadn't changed. The fuel was flowing into the tank, but the readout was frozen. I tried to remove the nozzle. It wouldn't budge. Locked in place, fuel flowing eternally, filling a tank that either was already full or would never be full or existed in a state between empty and full forever. I left the nozzle, left the pump running, climbed into my cab and started the engine. The dashboard clock said 11:34 p.m. My phone said 2:53 a.m. The sun outside was directly overhead, noon brightness, even though it had been sunset minutes ago. Time was fracturing completely. I put the truck in gear and pulled away from the pump. The nozzle ripped free, fuel spraying, but I didn't care. I just needed to get back to the highway, back to normal time. Back to the world where November 9th came after November 8th, and clocks moved forward in predictable seconds. The exit to Route 50 was right there. I could see the highway, but no matter how I drove, I couldn't reach it. The parking lot stretched, extended, the exit staying the same distance ahead no matter how fast I went. I was driving through taffy, through molasses time, the truck moving but space not cooperating. In my mirrors, the station was receding normally, but ahead, the highway stayed forever at the same unreachable distance. I drove for what felt like an hour. The odometer said I'd traveled 37 miles, but I was still in the parking lot, still seeing the same light poles, the same trash cans, the same painted lines under my wheels. 37 miles in a circle 200 feet across. Space was broken the same way time was broken. My phone rang. I answered. Hello. Marcus Chen, a woman's voice, calm, official. Yes, who is this? This is Highway Patrol. We found your truck abandoned at Sycamore Springs. You've been reported missing. Where are you? I'm in my truck. I'm trying to leave. I can't reach the highway. Sir, your truck has been parked at Sycamore Springs for 3 weeks. The clerk reported it abandoned on November 16th. Can you tell me where you are? November 16th. That was a week from now. I'd been missing for 3 weeks that hadn't happened yet. I looked at my phone screen November 9, 2:56 a.m. 3 minutes since I'd started pumping gas. But outside, the sun was setting again, cycling through day in minutes. I don't know where I am, I said. I'm at the station, but I can't leave. Time is wrong. Everything is wrong. Marcus, listen carefully. Stop driving, park the truck, stay where you are, we're sending units to your location. What location? I don't know when I'm in. The call dropped. My phone screen cracked, the same way Patricia Sullivan's had cracked, spiderwebbing from a center point. But mine showed a date bleeding through from underneath. November 8, November 9, November 12, November 3, all displaying simultaneously, the phone unable to decide which moment it existed in. I stopped the truck. What else could I do? I couldn't reach the exit, couldn't escape the loop. I was stuck at Sycamore Springs the same way those other 7 drivers were stuck, the same way dozens or hundreds of drivers over decades had gotten stuck, pulled into whatever temporal anomaly this place was. The station existed in all times simultaneously. That was the only explanation. It was a knot in the timeline, a place where past and future tangled together, where Thursday and Wednesday and next year all occupied the same physical space. When you entered, you fell into the knot. You became unstuck from sequence. You experienced moments in random order or all orders or no order. And the longer you stayed, the more tangled you got, until you couldn't find your way back to the linear timeline at all. I was tangling, I could feel it. My memories were shuffling. I remembered having this realization yesterday, no, 3 hours from now, no, last week. I remembered parking at Pump 3 and Pump 5 and Pump 2. I remembered Derek and Linda and a third clerk named Marcus, except that was my name, wasn't it? Or was I the clerk? Was I outside the station or inside? Was I driving away or arriving? The moments were stacking, overlapping, and I existed in all of them simultaneously. Through the windshield, I saw myself pumping gas. A different me, younger, arriving at the station for the first time, 2:47 a.m. November 9th. He looked confused. In a few minutes, he'd walk inside and talk to Derek. He'd start the loop. He was me before I knew what this place was. In my side mirror, I saw myself older, walking away from a truck so rusted it was falling apart. That me looked defeated. He'd been here years, decades maybe, living and reliving the same hours of November 2023, aging while time refused to move forward. That was me after the station finished with me. All 3 versions existed simultaneously. Past me, present me, future me, all trapped at Sycamore Springs, all experiencing the same impossible moment from different positions in our personal timeline. I opened my door and stepped out. The parking lot was full now. Dozens of trucks, hundreds maybe, all the trucks that had ever stopped here, all existing at once. And the drivers, I saw them, ghosts, shadows, solid people, all walking between the pumps, all confused, all trying to leave, all failing. A crowd of temporal refugees unstuck from sequence, living in the knot. "You're new," a voice said. I turned, a woman's 60s trucker jacket from a company I didn't recognize. "How long have you been here?" I asked. 30 years or 3 hours, both, neither. Time doesn't work anymore. I stopped to fuel up in 1993 and I've been trying to leave ever since. But I'm also just arriving. I'm also just leaving. I'm in all of it. How do we get out? She smiled sadly. We don't. The station doesn't let go. It collects moments. We're part of its collection now, exhibits in a museum of frozen time. Around us, the station cycled through its existence. I saw it being built, construction workers pouring foundation, raising walls. I saw it old and crumbling, windows broken, pumps rusted. I saw it in summer heat and winter snow simultaneously. All moments existing in the same space, the station's entire timeline collapsed into a single eternal present. And we were trapped in it, all of us. Every driver who'd ever made the mistake of stopping at Sycamore Springs. We were fossils in amber, preserved in temporal resin, experiencing our final stop forever and never. I looked at my watch. 2:47 a.m. The second hand wasn't moving. It would always be 2:47 a.m. I would always be arriving, always pumping gas, always talking to Derek, always trying to leave, always failing, always here. The station fed on time. That's what it did. It consumed temporal energy, pulled travelers into its knot, and kept them as power sources. We were batteries. Our lives, our moments, our forward progression, all siphoned off to fuel whatever impossible mechanism kept this place existing outside normal causality. I was never leaving. I understood that now. Route 50 would stay forever at the horizon. My truck would drive forever without arriving. I would age and regress and age again, cycling through my own personal timeline, a battery discharging and recharging, providing energy to the knot. The sun set and rose simultaneously. Derek and Linda worked the counter in shifts that happened all at once. My phone showed every date and no date. I was Marcus Chen, 42, stopped at Sycamore Springs at 2:47 a.m. on November 9th. I was Marcus Chen, 67, still here, still trying to leave, having lived 25 years in the same 6 minutes. I was Marcus Chen, 29, arriving for the first time on a route in 2010, not knowing this would be my last stop. All versions, all moments, all trapped. The station that eats time had eaten mine. And it was still hungry. Story 4, The Convoy of Meat. The hitchhiker's thumb was hanging by a thread of skin when I picked him up outside Amarillo, but he was still smiling, using his other hand to wave me down. And when he climbed into my cab trailing blood across the passenger seat, he said, "Thank you kindly," like nothing was wrong even though I could see bone and tendon through the shredded meat of his thumb, and the smell hit me like a physical wall. Copper and rot, and something underneath that smelled like cooking pork. He settled into the seat, dripping, and pointed down I-40 eastbound with his ruined hand. "Memphis," he said. "I'm heading to Memphis. You going that way?" Thomas Whitmore, 51, 27 years hauling dry goods, mostly textile routes through Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas. I'd picked up hitchhikers before, usually other truckers between gigs, occasionally desperate travelers, but I'd never picked up someone who was obviously injured and didn't seem to care. The man's thumb was destroyed. The damage looked days old, meat gone gray and septic, but he was acting like it was a paper cut. "You need a hospital," I said. "I need Memphis. You going to Memphis?" "You're going to lose that thumb. Probably the hand. That's infected as hell." He looked at his thumb like he'd forgotten it was there. "Oh, this. Yeah, it fell off a while back. Doesn't hurt anymore. Nothing hurts anymore after the first few hours. You get used to it." Fell off, doesn't hurt. I should have stopped the truck right there and kicked him out. But he had this look, this calm, accepting look, that made me hesitate, like he was already dead and just hadn't laid down yet. And part of me, the stupid, curious part, wanted to know his story. "What happened?" I asked. "Same thing that happens to all of us on the meat convoy. You start losing pieces, fingers first, then toes, then bigger pieces, but you keep driving. That's the important thing. You keep driving toward Memphis, have to reach Memphis, have to deliver the cargo." "What cargo?" He smiled wider, his teeth were gray. "You'll see, you're part of it now. You stopped for me. That means you're recruited. Welcome to the convoy." I looked in my side mirror and saw headlights behind me. 7 trucks, identical formation, maintaining perfect distance. They hadn't been there before. I'd been alone on this stretch of I-40 for 30 miles. But now there they were, appearing from nowhere, boxing me in. The convoy. "What the fuck is this?" I said. Like I said, the meat convoy. We all haul the same cargo. We all drive to Memphis. We all lose pieces along the way, but we arrive. We always arrive, even if there's not much left of us by the time we get there. I grabbed the CB radio. Anyone listening? I've got 7 trucks tailing me in formation. Anyone got information? This is Road King. Anyone got ears on? Static, then a voice came through, a wet, labored voice speaking through ruined lungs. Road King, this is Meat Wagon 3. You're the new recruit. Welcome to the convoy. Check your cargo. You're hauling now. You've always been hauling. I looked at the hitchhiker. He was still smiling. I don't have cargo. I'm empty, deadheading to Little Rock to pick up a load. Check your trailer, he said. I had a bad feeling. The kind of feeling that makes your stomach drop and your hands go cold. But I pulled over at the next wide spot, and the 7 trucks pulled over behind me, their positions perfect, their movements synchronized. I got out and walked back to my trailer, the hitchhiker following, his thumb leaving a trail of droplets on the asphalt. I opened the trailer doors. It was full of meat, human meat, bodies, parts of bodies, arms and legs and torso stacked like firewood, pale and bloodless, all arranged carefully, organized by type. Left arms in one section, right legs in another. Heads lined up along the wall, faces slack, eyes open. And all of it fresh, not frozen, not preserved. Just fresh meat that should have been rotting in the Texas heat but somehow was. "What the fuck is this?" I whispered. "The cargo," the hitchhiker said. "We all haul the cargo, it's us. Pieces we've lost, pieces we'll lose, all going to Memphis. The plant needs the meat. The plant is always hungry." I recognized one of the heads. It was the hitchhiker's head. Exact match. Same face. Mouth open in the same smile. But he was standing next to me, head still attached, looking at his own severed head with casual interest. "That's me from yesterday," he said. "Or tomorrow, hard to tell. The convoy exists in different times simultaneously. You lose yourself piece by piece, but you keep driving, and the pieces you lose appear in the trailer. Eventually, all of you ends up in the cargo, but the driving continues. The convoy doesn't stop." I slammed the trailer doors and ran back to my cab. The 7 trucks behind me were waiting patiently. I could see the drivers through their windshields now. They were all in various states of decay. One was missing his face, just skull showing through torn flesh. Another had no arms, steering with stumps. A third was barely there at all, just a skeleton in a driver's seat, somehow still operating the vehicle. I needed to get away from them. I pulled back onto I-40 and accelerated hard, pushing the engine, trying to break away from the convoy, but they matched my speed perfectly. I hit 80. They hit 80. I pushed to 90. They stayed exactly 7 trucks behind, never gaining, never falling back. The hitchhiker was still in my passenger seat. "You can't leave the convoy," he said. "Once you stop for one of us, you're recruited. You're part of the route now. Memphis is waiting." "I'm not going to Memphis." "Yes, you are. Check your GPS." I looked at the navigation screen. It had changed. Destination, Memphis Rendering Plant, 347 Slaughterhouse Road. Arrival time, November 11, 3:47 a.m., 2 days from now. The route was locked in. I tried to change it, but the screen wouldn't respond. Just kept displaying that address, that arrival time, counting down the miles. "What happens in Memphis?" I asked. "The plant processes the meat, our meat. We deliver ourselves piece by piece over time. Some of us have been on the convoy for years, slowly falling apart, hauling our own bodies to be rendered. It's a cycle. You start whole. You lose pieces, the pieces go in the trailer, you keep driving. Eventually, you're mostly cargo and barely driver, but you still drive. The convoy always drives. I felt a sharp pain in my left hand. Looked down. My pinky finger was turning gray. The flesh was dying, blood flow stopping, tissue necrotizing in real time. I watched it happen, the finger going from healthy pink to ashen gray in 30 seconds. The pain faded. The finger went numb, and then with a soft, tearing sound it fell off, just dropped into my lap, dead meat that used to be part of me. "It has started," the hitchhiker said. "The convoy takes payment. The cargo demands contribution. You'll lose pieces all the way to Memphis, small things first, then bigger things, but you'll keep driving. The need to reach Memphis overrides everything else. Pain, fear, self-preservation, all that matters is the delivery." I threw the finger out the window and grabbed the wheel with both hands. No, 8 fingers now, trying to focus on driving, trying to think of a way out of this. But the hitchhiker was right. Some compulsion was settling over me, a need to drive east, to reach Memphis, to deliver the cargo. It wasn't my desire, it was planted, external. The convoy was in my head now, rewiring my priorities, making Memphis the only thing that mattered. Behind me, the 7 trucks stayed in formation. And in my trailer, I knew my finger had appeared, adding to the cargo, a small piece of Thomas Whitmore joining the collection of human parts being transported to whatever horror waited at 347 Slaughterhouse Road. We drove through the night. The hitchhiker talked, describing the convoy's history. It had been running for decades, maybe centuries. New drivers were recruited constantly, anyone who stopped to help, anyone who showed mercy to one of the decaying hitchhikers along I-40. Once recruited, you drove until you were cargo. Then your truck joined the formation with a skeleton driver, and you waited for a new recruit to join the convoy. It grew, expanded, fed itself into Memphis in an endless stream of meat and mercy. By dawn, I'd lost 3 more fingers and 2 toes. They just died and fell off painless, and I knew they were appearing in my trailer, adding to my contribution. The hitchhiker had lost his entire left arm during the night. It had separated at the elbow, flopping into the floorboard, and he'd kicked it aside casually and continued talking with his remaining arm, gesturing for emphasis. We picked up another hitchhiker outside Oklahoma City. Woman, 30s, missing her nose, just 2 holes in the center of her face. She climbed into the sleeper berth and immediately started losing her hair, clumps coming out in her hands, and she collected each handful carefully, placing them in a plastic bag. "For the cargo," she explained. "Everything goes to Memphis. Everything gets rendered." The convoy behind me had grown to 15 trucks. Each time we passed a stranded vehicle, another truck appeared in the formation. Other drivers who'd been recruited before me, all falling apart, all driving toward Memphis with trailers full of themselves. My left hand was gone by Missouri. The whole hand separated at the wrist, and I had to learn to steer with just my right. The hitchhiker helped, reaching over with his remaining arm to steady the wheel when needed. We were working together. The convoy was cooperative, all of us decaying, all of us driving, all of us contributing our meat to the cargo. I tried to feel horror, tried to feel fear, but the compulsion was too strong. All I felt was determination. Memphis was close. Memphis was necessary. Memphis was where the cargo needed to go, and I was proud to be delivering it, even if the cargo was me. The noseless woman lost both feet somewhere in Arkansas. She couldn't walk anymore, so she crawled when we stopped for fuel, pulling herself across the asphalt with her hands, leaving a smeared trail, smiling the whole time. "Almost there," she kept saying. "Almost to Memphis, almost done." By the time we crossed into Tennessee, I'd lost my left arm at the shoulder, and 4 ribs had somehow worked themselves out through my side, falling away like shed scales. I was a skeleton with meat attached, held together by compulsion and the need to deliver. The hitchhiker was just ahead now, sitting on the dashboard, still smiling, still giving directions with his eyes. The woman in back was just a torso, rolling around in the sleeper berth, laughing softly. The convoy was 40 trucks strong, all of us falling apart, all of us driving, all of us arriving. We pulled into Memphis at 3:47 a.m. on November 11th, exactly as scheduled. The GPS guided us to 347 Slaughterhouse Road. The rendering plant was massive, industrial, surrounded by high walls and steam. The gates opened automatically. The convoy drove through in formation, perfect spacing, perfect timing. Inside, workers waited. They weren't human, not entirely. Parts of them were mechanical, parts were meat. They'd been drivers once, I understood. They'd delivered their cargo and then they'd been repurposed. Given new bodies made of processed meat and steel, put to work processing the next delivery. They guided my truck to a loading dock, opened my trailer, started unloading the pieces, my fingers, my hand, my arm, my ribs, all the parts of Thomas Whitmore that had fallen off during the drive. They weighed each piece, marked it on a ledger, added it to the rendering queue. "Excellent delivery," one of the meat workers said. His mouth was on his chest, speaking from where a heart should be. "You've contributed adequately. Tomorrow you drive back to Amarillo, pick up more hitchhikers, bring them to Memphis. The cycle continues." "Tomorrow," I said with what was left of my mouth. My lips were gone, teeth exposed. "The convoy always drives. You're part of it now. You'll regenerate just enough to make the next trip. Lose more pieces, deliver them, regenerate again. Forever, the plant needs meat. You provide meat. You're meat. Everyone's meat. The convoy is eternal." And I understood. I was trapped in the cycle. I'd drive to Amarillo, barely alive, regenerate enough flesh to be functional, pick up decaying hitchhikers who'd been through the same process and drive back to Memphis, falling apart all the way. The cargo was infinite because the drivers were infinite, recycled, reused, rendered and reformed over and over. I'm writing this from my cab in the park. Ing lot of the Memphis rendering plant. My right hand has regenerated enough to hold a pen. By tomorrow, I'll have enough body mass to drive. The hitchhikers are already waiting back in Amarillo. I can see them in my mind, standing on the roadside, thumbs hanging by threads, smiling, ready to be picked up by someone merciful enough to stop. Don't stop. If you see someone hitchhiking on I-40 between Amarillo and Memphis, don't stop. They're not looking for a ride. They're looking for a replacement. They're recruiting for the convoy. I have to go now. The plant whistle is blowing. Time to start the drive back west. Time to collect more cargo, my cargo, everyone's cargo. The convoy of meat is always driving. And it's always hungry. Story 5, the CB radio from nowhere. The voice came through my CB at 1:37 a.m. on Channel 19. Clear as crystal despite me being in the middle of the desert with no other trucks for 40 miles. And it said, "Turn around right now, or in exactly 16 minutes you're going to die." And then gave me precise details about how I'd die. The steering linkage failure, the way my truck would veer left across the median into oncoming traffic, the impact with the tanker truck. The fire that would burn hot enough to melt my bones into the metal frame, and the fact that no one would be able to identify my remains except by checking the VIN on what was left of the engine block. The voice was calm, clinical, and it sounded exactly like me. Raymond Foster, 34, independent hauler, primarily Southwest routes. I'd been driving through New Mexico on I-40 empty trailer heading to Gallup to pick up a load of machine parts. The night was clear. The road was empty. My truck was running perfectly. I just had full maintenance in Albuquerque 2 days prior. There was no reason to believe anything would fail, let alone in exactly 16 minutes. But the voice knew my voice. It had my accent, my speech patterns, the way I pronounced exactly with a slight emphasis on the second syllable. It was me warning myself, and the certainty in the tone made my hands go cold on the steering wheel. I grabbed the CB handset. "Who is this? Identify yourself." This is Raymond Foster at 1:53 a.m. I'm 16 minutes ahead of you. I died. The steering failed. I crashed. I burned. But somehow I'm still on the radio, broadcasting backward through time, and I can warn you. I can save you. Turn around. Don't drive this stretch of I-40. The failure happens at mile marker 112. You're at mile marker 97. You have 16 minutes. I looked at my odometer. Mile marker 97, exactly right. This was impossible. CB radios don't transmit through time. They don't carry conversations with future versions of yourself. This was a prank. Someone with a voice modulator fucking with truckers for entertainment. I'd heard of it happening, bored kids with CB equipment imitating voices, creating panic. But the details, the specificity, the steering linkage, how would a random prankster know about steering linkage? How would they know I'd be at mile marker 97 at exactly 1:37 a.m.? If this is real, I said, tell me something only I would know. Your ex-wife's name was Jennifer. You have a scar on your left ankle from a fishing accident when you were 12. Your mother's maiden name was Kowalski. You have $1,700 hidden in the sleeper berth, cash you don't report, emergency money. The bills are mostly 20s. You keep them in a boot. Your left boot specifically. The brown one, not the black one. I felt the blood drain from my face. All of it was correct, every detail. And the voice was still speaking, still warning, and now I could hear something in the background of the transmission, crackling sounds, heat sounds, and screaming. My screaming. Distant but definitely mine, high and ragged and full of agony. I'm burning right now, the voice said. I'm on fire at mile marker 112, and I'm broadcasting backward, trying to warn myself, trying to change what happened. Turn around, Raymond, please. The pain is God, it's so much worse than you can imagine. The fire is still happening, I'm still in it. I'm dying in 16 minutes and I'm dying right now simultaneously. Turn around. My foot eased off the accelerator. Mile marker 98, 14 minutes until 112 if I maintained speed. I could turn around, find an exit, avoid the entire stretch. If this was real, and how could it not be real with those details, then turning around would save my life. But another thought occurred to me. If I turned around, then I wouldn't die at mile marker 112, which meant the voice on the radio wouldn't exist, which meant it couldn't warn me, which meant I wouldn't turn around, which meant I'd die, which meant the voice would warn me. A paradox, a loop, cause and effect eating their own tail. If I turn around, I said, you won't exist. You're a version of me that dies. If I don't die, you don't happen. Silence on the CB. Then I know, but I'll still be here. I'll still be burning. The timeline doesn't erase me. It just branches. You'll be fine. I'll still be on fire. Both things will be true. Save yourself, Raymond. Let me burn. One of us should survive. Mile marker 99. The desert stretched endlessly on both sides, dark and empty. No exits visible. The next turnoff was 15 miles behind me. I'd have to reverse course, drive back, lose an hour. And what if this was a prank? What if I turned around and nothing was wrong with my steering, and I'd been fooled by someone with good information and a sick sense of humor? But the screaming in the background of the transmission, that was real. That was me. I knew my own voice in pain. I'd broken my collarbone in a motorcycle accident at 26. I knew what I sounded like when I was really hurt. This was that sound, amplified, extended, worse. Why is the failure happening? I asked. What causes the steering linkage to break? I don't know, it just fails. Maybe metal fatigue, maybe a defect from the factory, maybe something else. But in 11 minutes, the linkage separates, the steering wheel locks hard left, and I can't control the truck. I cross the median. The tanker is coming westbound. The driver doesn't have time to react. We collide head-on. His tank is full of gasoline. The explosion is immediate. I'm conscious for maybe 40 seconds before the smoke suffocates me, but the fire keeps burning. I'm still burning, Raymond. I'm still here in the fire, and I've been here for hours even though it's only been minutes because time in the fire is different. Slower. Every second lasts forever. Mile marker 101, 10 minutes. I could see the road ahead straight and clear. No traffic, no tanker truck. But if I kept driving, in 10 minutes there would be a tanker coming westbound, and I'd swerve left, and we'd collide, and I'd burn. Unless the voice was wrong, unless the steering didn't fail, unless I could prevent the failure somehow. "Can I stop?" I asked. "Pull over, check the steering, fix it before it fails." I tried that. The other me, the me that existed before this me, he got a warning too, from another version, further back in the loop. He pulled over, checked the steering, everything looked fine. Then he started driving again, and the failure happened anyway. You can't fix it. You can only avoid it. Turn around. This was insane. I was having a conversation with my own future corpse, being warned about a death that hadn't happened yet, but apparently had happened and was still happening in some parallel timeline where I was simultaneously alive and dead and burning forever. The physics made no sense. The causality made no sense, but the voice was real. The details were real. The screaming was real. Mile marker 104, 7 minutes. I made a decision. I kept driving. "Why?" the voice on the CB said. "Why won't you turn around?" "Because if you're real, if this is really happening, then I'm trapped in a loop. Every version of me that gets warned turns around or doesn't turn around, and something happens regardless. Maybe I avoid the steering failure and die some other way. Maybe the timeline needs me to die here and it'll find a method. Or maybe you're not real and I'm having a psychotic break and turning around is exactly the wrong move. So I'm going to keep driving. I'm going to reach mile marker 112. And if the steering fails, at least I tried." "You're going to burn," the voice said, and now it sounded angry. "You're going to feel what I'm feeling. The fire climbing up your legs, melting your skin, the smoke filling your lungs, your eyes boiling in their sockets. And you'll be here with me, trapped in this moment, broadcasting backward, trying to warn the next version. And he won't listen either because we're all you and you're stubborn and stupid, and you don't believe it can happen to you." Mile marker 107, 4 minutes. My hands were shaking on the steering wheel. I could feel the tension in the column, the normal resistance of the linkage. Everything felt fine. No vibration, no looseness, no indication of imminent failure. But that's how failures work. They're sudden, catastrophic, no warning until it's too late. "Last chance," the voice said. 3.5 minutes, mile marker 112 is coming. The tanker is coming. Turn around or die. I didn't turn around. I accelerated, pushed the truck to 75, then 80. If the failure was going to happen, I'd reach the spot faster, get it over with, prove or disprove the warning. The desert blurred past, mile markers climbing. 108, 109, 110. The CB crackled. I'm so sorry. I tried to save us, but we're going to burn together. Welcome to the fire, Raymond. Welcome to eternity." Mile marker 111. Mile marker 112. The steering held. The wheel turned smoothly. I crossed 112 doing 85 and nothing happened. No failure, no tanker truck, no collision, just empty highway and dark desert and the sound of my own breathing. The CB was silent. I'd made it, I'd survived. The warning was wrong, or I'd avoided the death by accelerating through it, or the timeline had changed or something. But I was alive, still driving, still intact. Then I saw the headlights ahead. Westbound, coming fast, a tanker truck. My steering wheel locked, hard left. No gradual failure, instant, complete lockup. The wheel wouldn't turn. I pulled with all my strength, but it was frozen, aimed at the median, and I was already crossing over, my truck drifting left into oncoming traffic. And the tanker was right there, horn blaring, driver's face visible in the headlights, eyes wide with terror, and we hit. The impact folded my cab like paper. The windshield exploded. The tanker ruptured. I smelled gasoline, thick and overwhelming, and then light, blinding orange light and heat. Instant, total heat. The fire was inside my cab, around me, on me, and I was screaming, and the steering wheel was melted to my hands, and I couldn't move, couldn't escape, just burned and screamed and burned. And even as I burned, even as my body was cooking and my lungs were filling with smoke, some part of me, some impossible, paradoxical part, was reaching for the CB radio. My melted fingers were grabbing the handset, and I was transmitting backward, through time, through the fire, broadcasting to myself 16 minutes ago at mile marker 97. Turn around right now, or in exactly 16 minutes you're going to die. I heard my own voice, younger, confused. Who is this? Identify yourself. And I answered, even though I was dying, even though the fire was consuming me. This is Raymond Foster at 1:53 a.m. I'm 16 minutes ahead of you. I died. The steering failed. I crashed. I burned. The loop was real. I was trapped in it. I had always been trapped in it. Every version of me that drove this stretch received the warning, made the choice, died in the fire, and became the voice that warned the previous version. An infinite chain of Raymond Fosters, all dying at mile marker 112, all broadcasting backward, all trying to save a version of themselves that couldn't be saved because saving themselves would erase the warning that led to the attempt to be saved. I was burning, I am burning, I will always be burning. The fire doesn't end. The timeline loops. And somewhere behind me, 16 minutes ago, another Raymond Foster is hearing my voice on the CB, weighing the decision, wondering if it's real. He'll keep driving, they always keep driving, we always keep driving. Because we're stubborn, because we don't believe, because the loop needs us to disbelieve so it can continue. I tried to warn you, Raymond. I tried to warn myself. But the loop is perfect. The loop is eternal. And we're all here in the fire together, broadcasting backward, dying forward, trapped in the moment of impact forever. Mile marker 112. 1:53 a.m. Forever. Turn around. Please, God, turn around. But you won't, I know you won't. Because I didn't. Because I am you. And we're burning. Always burning. Story 6. The exit that shouldn't exist. I took exit 437 off I-90 in Montana because my GPS insisted it was the fastest route to the next town. But exit 437 doesn't exist on any map, isn't listed in any trucker guide, and the road it connected to went straight for exactly 93 miles through landscape that changed biomes every 10 miles. Desert to forest to swamp to tundra, defying every law of geography and climatology. And the town at the end had my name on the welcome sign, and every single resident looked exactly like people I'd known who died. My father was pumping gas. My childhood best friend who drowned at 15 was working the convenience store register. And my stillborn daughter, who would have been 23, was sitting in a diner booth waiting for me, wearing a college sweatshirt from a university she never lived to attend. Diane Mercer, 47, long-haul specialist, coast-to-coast routes, 22 years behind the wheel. I knew I-90 like my own reflection. I could drive it in my sleep. Knew every exit, every rest stop, every speed trap from Seattle to Boston. Exit 437 was not part of that knowledge. Between exit 434 and exit 438, there was nothing. Just 60 miles of empty highway through Montana wilderness. but my GPS showed it. Exit 437, displayed clearly, and the electronic sign over the highway confirmed it. Exit 437, MERCRVILLE, gas food lodging. Mercerville, my last name. I'd never heard of a town called Mercerville. But there was the exit approaching fast, and my fuel gauge was showing a quarter tank, and the next confirmed gas station was 80 miles ahead, so I took it. The off-ramp curved left, descended, and connected to a two-lane road that shouldn't exist. The landscape around the interstate had been typical Montana, grassland, distant mountains, sparse trees, but this road cut through something else. The first 10 miles were Sonoran desert, saguaro cacti, red sand, heat shimmers. Possible we were at 46 degrees north latitude. Saguaros don't grow here. The climate is wrong. The ecosystem is wrong. But there they were, 20-foot cacti standing in perfect rows like sentries. At mile 11, the desert ended abruptly. Just stopped, like someone had drawn a line, and the road entered dense pine forest, the kind you see in Washington or Oregon, tall trees, moss, ferns, damp air. The temperature dropped 30 degrees in 30 feet. My windshield fogged, and the trees weren't just growing, they were watching. I could feel attention from them, awareness, like the forest had eyes in its bark. At mile 27, the forest became swamp. Cypress trees with hanging moss, standing water on both sides of the road, humidity so thick my AC couldn't handle it. Alligators on the roadside, alligators in Montana. I saw them clearly, 3 of them, basking on the asphalt shoulder, not moving as I passed. And they turned their heads to follow my truck, tracking me with yellow eyes that reflected my tail lights like mirrors. At mile 41, the swamp became tundra. Permafrost, snow, Arctic wind. My cab heater struggled. The road was ice. I dropped to 30 miles per hour, trying not to slide. And in the distance, I saw polar bears, 4 of them walking parallel to the highway, matching my speed, their heads turning in unison to watch me pass. The road was a catalog of impossible climates. Every 10 miles, a new biome, each one perfectly detailed. Each one completely wrong for this latitude, longitude, elevation. I was driving through a geographical fever dream, and the road just kept going, straight as an arrow, 93 miles through climates that shouldn't exist in sequence. At mile 93, I saw the town. Welcome to MERCRVILLE, population 1. The sign had a photograph, my face. My driver's license photo from 8 years ago, and underneath, DIANE Mercer, beloved resident, founded 1998. 1998 was the year my daughter was stillborn, the year my marriage ended, the year I started driving trucks to escape the grief. And now there was a town named after me, claiming I founded it, with a population of 1, even though I could see buildings and streets and people moving around in the twilight. I pulled into the first gas station, the only gas station, Mercer's Fuel. The pumps were vintage from the 1950s, but the digital readout showed current prices. A man was standing by pump 3, holding the nozzle, waiting. As I got closer, I recognized him. Dad. He'd died 6 years ago. Heart attack. I'd been in Colorado when it happened, couldn't make it back in time. But here he was, wearing his favorite flannel shirt, looking exactly as he had at 63, smiling like he'd been expecting me. Hey, sweetheart, he said, need a fill up. I couldn't speak, my throat closed. This wasn't real. This was a breakdown, a hallucination. Carbon monoxide poisoning from a faulty exhaust system. I was dying in my cab somewhere on I-90, and my brain was creating this elaborate fantasy as I suffocated. You're not real, I managed. Real enough. Let me pump your gas. You must be exhausted. 93 miles through all those climates is tough driving. He started fueling my truck without waiting for permission. The numbers climbed on the pump display. The fuel was going in. I could hear it, smell the diesel. If this was a hallucination, it was incredibly detailed. "Where am I?" I asked. "Mercerville, your town. You built it, Diane, don't you remember? You founded this place in 1998, when Emily died, when everything else ended. You needed somewhere to go, somewhere that was yours, so you made this. All of us here were yours, your people, the ones you lost. We're all waiting for you here." Emily, my daughter's name. The name I'd chosen, the name that went on the tombstone for a baby who never breathed. He knew the name. "Emily's here," I whispered. He nodded toward the convenience store. "In the diner. She's been waiting 23 years. She wants to meet you." I walked toward the store like a sleepwalker. The town around me looked normal, small Main Street, shops, houses, but empty. No cars except mine. No sounds except wind. The people I saw moving were transparent, ghostly, there and not there simultaneously. Inside the store, a young man stood behind the register. Early 20s. Blonde hair, wide smile, he waved. Ethan, my best friend from childhood. We'd been 10 when he drowned in the lake during summer camp. I'd watched him go under, watched the counselors dive for him, watched them pull his body out, blue and still. That was 37 years ago. "Hey, Diane," he said, like we'd seen each other yesterday. "Your usual." "My usual. Coffee black, 2 sugars, that's what you always get." He poured it before I could respond, handed me the cup. The coffee was hot, real, exactly how I liked it. "You drowned," I said. "I know, but I'm here now. Everyone ends up here eventually. Mercerville is the place for everyone you lost. You created it to hold us, to keep us, so you'd never have to say goodbye completely." The diner was through a doorway at the back of the store. 5 booths, empty except for one. And in that booth, a young woman sat reading a textbook, wearing a sweatshirt that said University of Montana. She looked up. She had my eyes, my mother's nose. A face I'd imagined 1,000 times, aging my stillborn daughter through the years, picturing what she'd look like at 5, at 10, at 16. This was that face. 23 years old, real, solid. "Mom," she said. I stood frozen. This was impossible. This was cruel. This was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. "Emily, I've been waiting. I knew you'd come eventually. Everyone comes to Mercerville when they're ready, when the grief gets heavy enough, when the driving stops working as an escape." She gestured to the seat across from her. "Sit, please. We have so much to talk about." I sat because my legs wouldn't hold me anymore. The booth was real. The table was real. Emily was real. I could see her breathing, see the pulse in her neck, see the tiny imperfections of her skin. Not a ghost, not a hallucination, or if it was perfect. "How?" I asked. "You made this place. In 1998, when they handed me to you and I wasn't breathing, when you held me and felt the possibility of who I might have been, you created Mercerville. A place where the people you lose don't stay lost, where everything that ended gets to continue, where your father still pumps gas and Ethan still works the register and I still get to grow up. It's not real in the way the world outside is real, but it's real enough for us, real enough for you." Am I dead? Did I die on the highway? Is this heaven or hell or... You're alive. You're parked at a gas station in a town that doesn't exist outside your grief. But you can stay here as long as you want. Hours, days, years. Time moves differently here. You could spend a lifetime with me, with Dad, with everyone you've lost, and when you leave, only a few minutes will have passed outside. Or you could leave now, drive back to the highway, and never find exit 437 again. Your choice. I looked around the diner. Through the windows, I saw more people. My grandmother who died when I was 7. my high school boyfriend who died in Iraq, my aunt, my uncle, colleagues, friends. Everyone I'd ever lost, all living in this town that shouldn't exist, waiting for me to visit, to stay, to join them permanently. "What if I don't leave?" I asked. "Then you stay. Eventually your body outside will fade. The truck will be found abandoned at the gas station. You'll become a missing person, then a statistic, then a memory. But you'll be here with us, with me. We can have the life we never got. I can tell you about college. You can teach me to drive. We can be mother and daughter the way we were supposed to be." It was tempting. God, it was so tempting to stay in Mercerville, to live in this grief-made town with all the people I'd lost. To have my daughter, even if she was just a projection, a might-have-been given form. But some part of me knew it was wrong. This place was beautiful, but it was a trap, a tomb. If I stayed, I'd be choosing death, not immediate death, but the death of forward motion. I'd be amber, preserved, perfect, and completely stopped. "I can't stay," I said, and saying it felt like dying again. Emily smiled sadly. "I know you're not ready, but you'll come back. Grief always brings people back to Mercerville, and next time maybe you'll stay. Maybe you'll be tired enough of the highway, tired enough of the empty cab, tired enough of driving away from everything." She stood, hugged me. She was solid and warm and smelled like baby powder even though she was 23. She felt like the daughter I'd imagined holding all these years, and letting her go was the hardest thing I'd ever done. I walked out of the diner. Ethan waved from the register. My father was finishing with my truck, replacing the fuel nozzle. They all smiled like this was temporary, like they knew I'd be back. I climbed into my cab, started the engine. The fuel gauge showed full. I hadn't paid, but I knew I wouldn't need to. This was my town, my grief, my creation. Payment wasn't necessary. I drove back the way I came. 93 miles through impossible climates. Tundra, swamp, forest, desert. Each one fading in my rearview mirror like a memory. And when I reached the on-ramp back to I-90, exit 437 was gone. Just vanished. The road I'd driven didn't exist. The off-ramp had sealed itself. I merged back onto the interstate, and my GPS showed nothing but empty highway between exits 434 and 438. Mercerville was gone. Or I was gone from it. I'm still driving. I've been driving for 3 months since that night. I've passed that stretch of I-90 40 times. I've looked for exit 437. It's never there, but sometimes late at night when I'm red and the grief is heavy, I see it starting to form in the distance. A shimmer, a possibility, the beginning of an off-ramp that leads to a town full of everyone I've lost. And someday, when I'm tired enough, when the driving stops working as an escape, I'll take that exit again. I'll return to Mercerville, and next time I might stay. I might choose my grief over my life. I might decide that a perfect daughter who never existed is better than a real world where she's buried in a cemetery I can't bear to visit. The exit is always there waiting, just slightly out of phase with reality. A place built from loss, populated by might-have-beens, and it has my name on the welcome sign. Mercerville. Population 1. Waiting for me to come home and make it 2. Story 7. The ECHOS of Mile 88. The scream coming from the CB radio wasn't human, but it was using my voice. I stared at the microphone in my hand, my knuckles white, listening to myself beg for mercy in a pitch so high it made my teeth ache. The static hissed and popped, layering under the shrieks, but the cadence was unmistakable. That was me dying. That was me, Robert Hayes, screaming as my bones were snapped one by one. I looked at the digital clock on the dash, 3:42 in the morning. The voice on the radio screamed a time too, 3:43, oh God, 3:43, and then abruptly cut to wet, gurgling silence. The clock on my dash flickered. The number 2 dissolved. It was now 3:43, and in the silence of the cab, I heard the passenger door handle click. I've hauled freight for 20 years, mostly long-haul runs through the empty stretches of Nevada and Utah where the darkness feels like a physical weight pressing against the glass. Tonight I was running a load of industrial piping down I-80, pushing through the salt flats towards Salt Lake City. It was March 14th, 2023. The weather had been clear when I left Elko, but a sudden, unnatural fog had rolled in around mile marker 80. It wasn't normal fog. It was thick, oily, and smelled like burning copper. My headlights just bounced off it, creating a wall of white that felt claustrophobic. I'd tried to radio ahead to see if anyone else was stuck in this soup, but that's when the screaming started. That's when I heard myself die. Now, with the clock reading 3:43, the cab felt ice cold. The heater was blasting, but I could see my breath pluming in the air. The click of the door handle echoed in my ears. I slammed the lock down instantly, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I looked out the passenger window, but the fog was pressed right up against the glass, swirling in gray eddies. Nothing, just the void. But then I saw it, a handprint on the outside of the glass. It was large, greasy, and sliding slowly downward. The terrifying part wasn't the size, it was that the hand had 6 fingers, and as it slid, it left a trail of that same oily substance that made up the fog. I grabbed my tire thumper from beside the seat, a heavy piece of hickory I kept for checking tire pressure and occasionally peace of mind. It felt useless now. The radio crackled again. "Please," my voice whimpered. "Not the eyes, don't take the eyes." I flinched violently. The voice was coming from the speaker, but it sounded like it was originating from inside my own head. I reached out and ripped the cord from the unit, severing the connection. The silence that followed was heavy, pregnant with a threat I couldn't name. I put the truck in gear, desperate to move, to get away from whatever was outside. The engine roared, the big diesel vibrating the floorboards, but the truck didn't move. The wheels spun, screeching against the pavement, but there was no forward momentum. It was as if the asphalt had turned to grease. I checked the mirrors. The trailer was gone, not unhitched, gone. The space behind the cab was empty, just the swirling fog where 53 feet of steel and cargo should have been. Panic, cold and sharp, pierced through my chest. I scrambled to the sleeper berth, tearing open the curtain to look out the rear window. The fog was there too, pressing in. But in the center of the swirling mist, illuminated by the red glow of my taillights, stood a figure. It was wearing my jacket, the faded blue denim one with the grease stain on the left pocket. It was wearing my hat. It was standing with its back to me, staring into the nothingness. I shouted, banging my fist against the glass. "Hey." "Who are you?" The figure didn't turn. Instead, it raised its right hand and pointed a finger toward the darkness. And then slowly, agonizingly, its head began to rotate. Not just turn, rotate. It went past the shoulder, past the back, turning a full 180 degrees until it was facing me. The face was mine, but the eyes were missing, just dark, empty sockets weeping black fluid. I stumbled back, falling onto the mattress of the sleeper. My breath came in ragged gasps. I scrambled back to the driver's seat, my hands shaking so badly I could barely grip the wheel. I had to get out. I had to run, but where? The fog was everywhere. I looked at the dash again. The clock still read 3:43. It hadn't changed. It had been minutes, maybe 10, since the screaming stopped, but time was frozen. I grabbed my phone. No signal. Searching. It mocked me in the upper corner. I tried to dial 911 anyway. The call failed instantly. I was alone. Completely, utterly alone in a bubble of time and fog with a thing that wore my face. Then came the knocking, gentle at first, almost polite. Tap, tap, tap on the roof of the cab right above my head. I froze, staring up at the fiberglass ceiling. Tap, tap, tap. It moved. It was crawling. I could hear the scrape of fabric, the shift of weight. Something heavy was moving on top of the truck. I reached for the door handle, thinking I'd make a break for it, but the handle was burning hot. I hissed and pulled my hand back, blisters already forming on my fingertips. The metal was glowing a dull red. The cab was becoming an oven. The heater controls were dead. I couldn't turn it off. The temperature was rising rapidly. Sweat poured down my face, stinging my eyes. The knocking grew louder, turning into pounding. Boom, boom, boom. The roof dented inward with each blow. I huddled in the footwell, the tire thumper clutched to my chest like a talisman. The heat was unbearable now. The plastic on the dashboard was starting to warp, releasing acrid fumes that made me cough. The pounding stopped. Silence returned, heavier than before. I waited, straining my ears. Then a sound that made my blood freeze, the hiss of air brakes releasing, not my brakes. I hadn't touched the yellow knob, but the sound was unmistakable. The truck lurched forward. I scrambled up into the seat, grabbing the wheel, but it spun freely in my hands. The steering column had been disconnected. The truck was moving on its own, accelerating into the white void. The speedometer climbed 20, 30, 40 mph. I slammed on the brake pedal. It went to the floor with zero resistance, no air pressure, no brakes. We were hurtling blindly through the fog. I stared out the windshield, waiting for the inevitable crash, the impact that would end it. But the road just kept going. And then the fog began to clear, not fade, but part like curtains on a stage. What was revealed wasn't I-80, it wasn't Earth. The sky was a bruised purple, swirling with vortexes of sickly green light. The ground was not asphalt, but a landscape of shifting gray ash. And lining the road, a path of crushed bone, were trucks. Hundreds of them, Peterbilts, Kenworths, Volvos, old cabovers from the 70s, sleek modern Cascadias. All of them rusted, decayed, skeletal. And inside each one sat a driver. Dried, mummified husks, their hands fused to the steering wheels, their mouths open in silent screams. My truck began to slow, the invisible force guiding it to an empty spot in this graveyard of gears. It rolled to a gentle stop between a rusting Mack and an unrecognizable heap of metal. The engine died. The silence of this dead world rushed in. I tried the door again. It was cool now, unlocked. I pushed it open and stumbled out onto the ash. The air was thin, smelling of ozone and rot. I looked around, desperate, my mind fracturing. "Hello?" I screamed. "Is anyone here?" My voice didn't echo. The ash absorbed it. I walked toward the Mack truck next to me. The door was open. I climbed up the steps and looked inside. The driver was a skeleton in a flannel shirt. On the seat beside him was a logbook. I reached out, my hand trembling, and opened it to the last entry. The date was October 4th, 1974. The location, I-80, mile marker 88. The note, "Fog, saw myself." I dropped the book and backed away, terror seizing my limbs. I turned to run back to my truck, my sanctuary, but stopped dead. My truck. It looked old. The paint was peeled and faded. The tires were flat, the rubber cracked and rotting. Rust streaked the chrome grille. It looked like it had been sitting there for 50 years. I looked at the mirror. My reflection stared back, but it wasn't me. It was the thing from the fog, the eyeless, weeping face. I raised my hands to my face, feeling for my eyes. My fingers touched wet, empty sockets. I couldn't see, yet I could see. I could see the purple sky, the bone road, the endless line of trucks. I opened my mouth to scream, to beg, to pray, but all that came out was static. The static of a CB radio left on an open channel. And then faintly, through my own throat, I heard a voice, a young, terrified voice. "Help me, please, it's 3:42 and I can't stop." It was me, a new me, driving into the fog at mile marker 88. I am the warning now. I am the scream on the radio. I stand by the road of bone and wait for the fog to bring the next one. I try to tell them turn back to stop, but my voice is just static and screams. The cycle doesn't end. The road goes on forever. and at mile marker 88, the time is always 3:43. Story 8, The Weight of Whispering Sands. The hitchhiker wasn't standing by the road. She was standing in the road. Center lane, facing my grill, arms spread wide like she was welcoming a lover. I slammed the brakes, the air horns blasting a warning that was 2 seconds too late. The massive grill of my Kenworth smashed into her with a sickening asterisk thud crunch that vibrated through the steering column and straight into my palms. I felt the impact in my teeth. The truck skidded, the trailer jackknifing slightly before I wrestled it to a halt on the shoulder. Silence rushed back in, heavy and suffocating, broken only by the hiss of the air brakes and my own ragged breathing. I sat there for a moment, gripping the wheel, the smell of burnt rubber filling the cab. I had killed someone. Marcus Chen, a safe driver for 15 years, had just turned a human being into roadkill on a lonely stretch of Route 66 outside of Barstow. It was August 12th, 2023. The heat was oppressive even at midnight, the desert floor radiating the day's fury back into the black sky. I grabbed my flashlight and jumped out of the cab, dread churning in my gut like battery acid. The beam of the light cut through the dusty air, sweeping across the asphalt. I walked back toward the front of the truck, my boots crunching on the gravel. I expected blood. I expected a broken body. I expected horror. But the grill was clean. Not a dent, not a scratch, not a drop of red. I frowned, sweeping the light across the road. Nothing, no body, no skid marks other than my own. I checked the undercarriage, crawling on my belly on the hot asphalt, shining the light into the dark recesses of the chassis. Nothing, just grease and road grime. I stood up, dusting off my jeans, confusion warring with relief. I knew I hit her, I felt it. The impact had been solid, undeniable. Had I hallucinated? Fatigue was a trucker's constant companion, but I wasn't that tired. I looked out into the desert. The scrub brush and cacti stood like silent sentinels in the darkness. Then I heard it, a whisper, not from the desert but from the trailer. "Let us out." It was faint, multiple voices overlapping, sounding like dry leaves skittering on pavement. I froze. I was hauling a sealed load of electronics, pallets of TVs and computers wrapped in plastic. There was no one in the trailer. I had watched the dock workers seal it myself in Lowe's Angels. I walked to the back of the trailer, the flashlight beam shaking in my hand. The seal was intact, number 4,599,201. Unbroken, I put my ear against the cold metal door. "Help us," a child's voice whimpered from inside. "It's so dark." My heart hammered. Stowaways, immigrants being smuggled. If so, they were in danger. The reefer unit wasn't on, but it was stifling inside that metal box. I broke the seal. I didn't care about the company protocol. People were in there. I threw the latch and swung the right door open. The beam of my light cut into the darkness of the trailer. It was empty, completely empty. No pallets, no TVs, no people. Just 53 feet of empty wood floor and aluminum walls. I stared, my mind unable to process the visual data. The manifest said 40,000 pounds of freight. I had felt the weight pulling the hills. The truck had been heavy. Now it was empty. And then the floor of the trailer rippled. The wood planks seemed to liquefy, turning into a shifting, churning surface of sand. Sand inside the trailer. It rose, forming shapes. Hands, faces, mouths open in silent screams. The voices returned, louder now, a cacophony of whispers. "Join us, Marcus. The road is long, and we are so many." I slammed the door shut, fumbling with the latch, my fingers clumsy with terror. I backed away, nearly tripping over my own feet. The truck was sinking. The asphalt beneath the tires was dissolving into that same shifting sand. The heavy tires were already submerged up to the rims. I ran to the cab, jumping in and turning the key. The engine roared to life, but the truck didn't move. The wheels spun, throwing up geysers of sand instead of smoke. The desert around me was changing. The cacti were gone, replaced by tall, jagged pillars of rock that looked like broken teeth. The sky had lost its stars, turning a dull, flat gray. I was no longer on Route 66. I was somewhere else. The radio crackled to life, static at first, then a clear, calm voice. "Welcome to the aggregate, Marcus. Your contribution has been weighed and accepted." I grabbed the CB mic. "Who is this? Where am I?" The voice chuckled, a dry, rasping sound. "You are where all lost things go. You are the cargo now." The truck groaned, metal twisting. I looked back through the sleeper curtain. The trailer was expanding, ballooning outward as if filled with tremendous pressure. The metal skin tore with a shriek, and sand poured out, tons of it, an endless avalanche. But it wasn't just sand. Mixed in the grit were personal items. A child's teddy bear, a wedding ring, a trucker's logbook, a solitary boot. The debris of 1,000 lost souls. The sand piled up against the windows of the cab, rising higher and higher. I was being buried. I tried to open the doors, but the weight of the sand held them shut. The glass cracked under the pressure. Spider webs of fractures spread across the windshield. I scrambled into the sleeper, looking for the escape hatch in the roof, but it wouldn't budge. The sand was piling on top of the truck, too. Darkness fell as the windows were completely covered. The air in the cab grew hot and stale. I was trapped in a coffin of steel and glass, buried alive in a desert that shouldn't exist. Then the whispers started again, coming from the vents, from the dashboard, from the very air itself. "One of us, one of us." I felt something touch my leg. I looked down. The floor of the cab was dissolving. Sand was bubbling up around the pedals, filling the footwell. And rising out of the sand was a hand, a woman's hand, the same hand I had seen welcoming me on the road. It reached up and grabbed my ankle. Her grip was iron, cold and unyielding. Another hand rose, then a face. Her eyes were filled with sand, her mouth pouring a stream of fine grit. "You stopped for me," she whispered, her voice like grinding stones. "Now stay with me." She pulled, I kicked, screaming, clawing at the upholstery, at the steering wheel, at anything to anchor myself. But the sand was relentless. It sucked at my boots, pulling me down into the floor of the truck. The truck itself was dissolving, the metal turning to dust and blowing away into the gray void. I was sinking into the earth, into the collective mass of the lost. My waist was submerged, then my chest. The pressure was immense, crushing the air from my lungs. I looked up one last time at the roof of the cab, which was now just a thinning veil of dissolving plastic. Through it, I saw faces looking down at me. Hundreds of them, truckers, families, hitchhikers, all trapped in the sand, all watching with sad resignation. The sand filled my mouth, gritty and dry. It filled my nose, my ears. The last thing I heard before the darkness took me completely was the sound of an engine starting. A new engine, a new truck, and the voice of a new driver full of confidence and life saying, "Dispatch, this is Unit 404 rolling out on Route 66. ETA in Barstow at 300. He was driving over me, driving over us. The road is built on the bones of those who vanished, and I am just another grain of sand in the asphalt. Story 9. The meat that grew in Trailer 4B. The smell hit me before I even opened the doors. A thick, sweet stench of rotting orchids and spoiled hamburger meat that made my stomach churn. I was parked at a rest stop on I-95 in Georgia, just south of Savannah. It was July 22nd, 2023, and the humidity was a physical weight, thick enough to drown in. Patricia Sullivan, had been hauling a reefer load of biological samples for a pharmaceutical company called Ethylgard. The manifest was vague, just crate numbers and perishable stamps, but the money was triple my usual rate. I should have known. High pay always means high risk or dirty work, but I needed the cash for my daughter's tuition, so I didn't ask questions until the smell. I checked the reefer unit's display. It was set to -20 degrees Fahrenheit. The readout showed it was holding steady. If it was that cold, nothing should be smelling like this. Nothing. I grabbed my heavy flashlight and the bolt cutters. The seal was still intact. I cut it, the metal snap echoing loudly in the quiet night. I swung the doors open, expecting a blast of Arctic air. Instead, I was hit by a wave of humid, tropical heat. The inside of the trailer wasn't a freezer, it was a jungle. A jungle of flesh. The walls, floor, and ceiling were covered in a pulsating, pinkish-gray membrane that looked like the inside of a stomach. Veins the size of garden hoses throbbed along the roof, pumping a dark, viscous fluid. The crates I had loaded were gone, or rather absorbed. I could see the rectangular outlines of them beneath the fleshy carpet, like bones under skin. And growing out of the floor were structures. Not plants, but pillars of bone and muscle, topped with wet, blinking eyes the size of dinner plates. They swiveled toward me as the light hit them. The trailer groaned, a wet, organic sound, as if the whole thing was taking a breath. I stumbled back, gagging, my hand clapping over my mouth. "What the hell?" I whispered. I reached for the door to slam it shut, but a tendril of flesh whipped out from the darkness faster than a cobra. It wrapped around my wrist. It was warm, wet, and incredibly strong. I screamed and pulled back, bracing my boots against the bumper. The tendril tight. Ned's small barbs digging into my skin. I felt a stinging sensation, then a numbness spreading up my arm. It was injecting me with something. Panic flared, hot and white. I grabbed the door latch with my free hand and slammed the heavy door onto the tendril. It severed with a squelch, spraying hot, black blood over my face and chest. The severed piece fell to the ground, thrashing like a dying snake before dissolving into a puddle of goo. I scrambled into the cab, locking the doors, shaking uncontrollably. I grabbed a rag and frantically wiped the blood off my face. It burned. My skin turned red and raw where it had touched. My wrist, where the tendril had grabbed me, was turning purple. The veins were standing out black and swollen. I could feel something moving under the skin, something wriggling up toward my elbow. I grabbed my pocket knife, flicked it open, and without thinking, sliced into the skin of my forearm. A small, white, worm-like thing spilled out, writhing on the denim of my jeans. I flicked it onto the floor and stomped on it. It burst with a pop. I had to dump this trailer. Now, I didn't care about the contract. I didn't care about the money. I started the engine. The truck shook violently, not a mechanical shake. The truck was being shaken from behind. I looked in the mirror. The trailer was expanding. The metal sides were bulging outward, groaning under immense pressure. Rivets popped like gunshots, pinging off the asphalt. The meat was growing. It was outgrowing its shell, and it was spreading. I could see the pink membrane creeping over the fifth wheel, moving up the back of the cab like a slow-motion tidal wave of flesh. It was trying to consume the tractor. I slammed the truck into gear and dumped the clutch. The tires smoked and the truck lurched forward. I aimed for the highway ramp. I needed speed. Maybe the wind would rip it off. Maybe I could crash the trailer into a bridge abutment. Anything to get it off me. As I merged onto I-95, the truck felt sluggish, heavy. The parasitic mass was adding tons of weight. I looked at the temperature gauge. The engine was overheating. The creature was clogging the intake, suffocating the machine. Then the voice started. It didn't come from the radio. It came from the sleeper berth behind me. "Mother," it croaked. "Hungry." I whipped my head around. The membrane had eaten through the back wall of the cab. It was oozing through the metal, dripping onto the mattress. And forming in the slime was a face, a half-formed, infant-like face with too many eyes and a mouth full of needle teeth. "Mother," it gurgled again. It wasn't calling for its mother. It was calling *me *mother. Because I was carrying it. Because I was now part of it. I screamed and swerved across 3 lanes of traffic. Cars honked and swerved to avoid the careening behemoth. I saw a horrified family in a minivan stare up as I passed, their faces pale under the highway lights. They saw the trailer. They saw the pulsating mass of flesh that had burst through the roof, waving tendrils in the night air like anemones in a current. I was driving a monster. I reached for the trailer brake release valve, the red knob on the dash. I pulled it. The trailer brakes should have locked up, sending the trailer into a skid while I disconnected. Nothing happened. The air lines had been consumed. The trailer controlled the truck now. The face in the sleeper was growing larger, pushing itself further into the cab. A hand, wet and skeletal, reached out toward my shoulder. I leaned forward, pressing myself against the steering wheel. My left arm, the one that had been grabbed, was completely numb now. I looked down. It wasn't my arm anymore. The skin had sloughed off, revealing raw muscle and bone that was reshaping itself. My fingers were fusing together. My nails were turning into black claws. I was changing. The infection was systemic. I was becoming the cargo. I saw a sign for a bridge ahead, the Talmadge Memorial Bridge. A high span over the Savannah River. If I couldn't detach the trailer, I would take the whole thing down. I couldn't let this thing reach a city. I couldn't let it spread. I floored the accelerator. The engine screamed in protest, temperature needle buried in the red. The thing behind me shrieked, a sound that shattered the rear window. "No, we feed," it roared. The tendrils wrapped around my neck, choking me. I gasped, vision blurring. I aimed for the guardrail at the highest point of the arch. 60 mph, 70 mph, the truck shuddered. I hit the concrete barrier at 75 miles per hour. The impact threw me forward, the seatbelt tearing into my chest. The truck smashed through the rail, tipping over the edge. For a second, we were weightless. I saw the dark water of the river rushing up to meet us. The creature screamed, 1,000 voices crying out in unison. The cab filled with the pink slime rushing in to cushion the impact to save its host, to save me. We hit the water with the force of a bomb, darkness, cold, silence. Then the pressure, we were sinking, but I didn't drown. The slime covered my face, filled my nose and mouth, but it didn't kill me. It oxygenated me. I opened my eyes in the murky depths. The truck was resting on the riverbed silt. The trailer had split open, and the flesh was blooming like a grotesque flower, releasing clouds of spores into the current. I looked at my hands. They were claws now. I looked in the rearview mirror, still intact in the crushed cab. My face was gone, replaced by a single large eye. I am down here, growing, waiting for the fishermen, waiting for the divers. The river carries my children to the sea, and soon the whole world will be Ethelgard. Story 10. The toll booth AT the end of the world. I've driven the Pennsylvania Turnpike 1,000 times. I know every curve, every tunnel, every rest stop between Breezewood and the Ohio line. But I had never seen the exit 0. Not exit 1, not exit 2, exit 0. It appeared out of the fog at 2:00 a.m. on November 9, 2023. My GPS, a usually reliable Garmin, was spinning in circles, displaying, recalculating in a frantic loop. The road signs were wrong too. Instead of the usual green reflective metal, they were made of wood, old weathered planks with hand-painted letters in dripping red paint. Last chance to pay. I was low on fuel, my bladder was bursting, and the fog was so thick I could barely see the hood ornament of my Peterbilt. So when I saw the faint amber glow of a toll booth off to the right, under that ominous sign, I took the exit. That was the mistake that cost me my soul. I rolled down the ramp. It was unnaturally long, spiraling downward like a corkscrew into the earth. The air pressure changed, my ears popping painfully. It felt like I was driving into a deep mine. Finally, the ramp leveled out, and I saw it. A single solitary toll booth sitting in the middle of a road that seemed to float in a void of total darkness. There was no ground on either side, just an abyss. The booth was old, rusted metal with a single flickering bulb hanging from a wire. A wooden gate arm blocked the way. I pulled up to the window, rolling down the glass. The air smelled of sulfur and burning hair. Inside the booth sat a man, or something shaped like a man. He wore a gray uniform that looked like it was made of ash. His hat was pulled low, shadowing his face. He didn't look up. He just held out a hand. The hand was charred, the fingers fused together like melted wax. "Toll," he rasped. His voice sounded like grinding stones. "How much?" I asked, reaching for my wallet. Usually it's $20 or an EZ Pass scan. I held out a 20. He didn't move. "Not paper," he said. "The toll is heavy. Give me a memory." I froze. "What?" He looked up then. He had no face, just a smooth, blank surface of scar tissue where eyes, nose, and mouth should be. Yet he spoke. "A memory, a happy one, the best one. Give it to me and you may pass." I thought he was crazy. A meth-head squatter playing games. I revved the engine. "Open the gate, buddy, or I'm driving through it." The gate didn't look sturdy. "Pass without paying," the faceless thing said, "and you leave a different way." I slammed the truck into gear and punched the gas. The Peterbilt surged forward, smashing through the wooden arm. It shattered easily. I laughed, adrenaline spiking. I sped away into the darkness, leaving the booth behind. But the road didn't lead back to the highway. It led to a mirror, a giant, impossible mirror standing across the road, hundreds of feet high. I slammed on the brakes, screeching to a halt inches from the glass. I looked at my reflection. It wasn't my truck. It was a wreck, a twisted, mangled pile of steel. And inside, I saw my body, crushed, bloody, dead. I looked down at myself in the cab. I was fine. I touched my face, solid, real. I looked back at the mirror. The dead me opened its eyes. They were black pits. It smiled, exposing shattered teeth. I threw the truck in reverse, backing up frantically. I turned the truck around, a 53-point turn on the narrow strip of asphalt surrounded by the void. I drove back toward the toll booth. I had to pay the toll. When I got back, the booth was different. It was larger. And there was a line of trucks, hundreds of them, stretching back into the dark. I pulled up behind a flatbed hauling lumber. The driver was standing by his door, weeping. He was holding a glowing orb in his hands, a swirl of blue light. He walked to the booth and handed it to the collector. As soon as the orb left his hands, his face went blank. All emotion, all life drained from his eyes. He got back in his truck and drove through the gate. He was a husk, an automaton. It was my turn. I pulled up. The collector held out his charred hand. "The price has gone up," he said. "You tried to run, now the toll is 2 memories and a finger." I stared at him. "Please," I begged. "I just want tea." "Oh, go home." "This is the way home," he replied. "The long way, the hard way, pay." I thought of my daughter's first steps, the way she laughed when I tickled her. I felt a pulling sensation in my chest, a physical tugging at my heart. I closed my eyes and let it go. A blue wisp of light floated from my chest into his hand. I felt a sudden emptiness, a hole in my mind. I knew I had a daughter, but I couldn't remember her face. I couldn't remember her laugh. It was just data, cold facts. "One more," the collector demanded. I thought of my wife, our wedding day, the smell of her perfume. I let it go. Another wisp, another hole. I didn't love her anymore. I knew I was married, but it felt like a contract, not a bond. The pain of loss was gone, replaced by a terrifying numbness. Now the finger. He produced a rusty pair of garden shears. I hesitated. Tears streamed down my face, but I didn't know why I was crying. I put my left pinky on the metal ledge. Snip. Pain exploded, white and hot. I screamed, clutching my bleeding hand. The collector dropped the severed digit into a bucket on the floor. It was filled with fingers, ears, toes. "You may pass." The gate opened. I drove through, sobbing, wrapping my hand in a greasy rag. The road curved upward, spiraling back to the surface. I burst out of the tunnel onto the turnpike. The sun was rising. It was morning. I was back. I was alive. But I wasn't. I drove home to my house in Ohio. I walked through the door. My wife ran to hug me. My daughter screamed, "Daddy," and grabbed my leg. I looked down at them. I felt nothing, absolutely nothing. They were strangers, annoying obstacles in my path. I pushed them away and went to the fridge to get a beer. I sat in my recliner and stared at the wall. The toll collector was right. I passed, but I left the best parts of me in that booth. I am a hollow man driving a hollow machine. And sometimes, late at night, I look at the stump of my finger and wish I had just stayed.